This is DeRHINO here, live at Ibiza Global Radio with Pete Tong and Rufus White. We're here at True Ibiza Stories, the Ruforia remix sessions, and a very, very interesting session we have today. We'll turn it over to our man with the plan, resident specialist for Native Instruments and Traktor, Rufus White.
Okay, good afternoon, and today we're here with our very special guest, Mr. Pete Tong, okay, and we've got a couple of questions here for him that we'd like to ask. So, Pete, you witnessed the birth of house music and obviously discovered countless artists throughout that time in the scene and brought them to the public eye. How have you seen the house music scene change throughout that time?
In Ibiza or just
in general, throughout those years?
Big question. How long have you got?
We'll start with the easy one, eh?
I mean, in one sense, it hasn't changed at all because the spirit of what we're all doing, I think, is pretty similar. I mean, obviously, the biggest thing of always it's just become public domain. It's an international language. It's that's the thing. We're lucky enough to travel all over the world, play in all sorts of weird and exotic places, and everybody can be on the same page. I mean, that's also because of the internet as well. But the fact that what is getting concocted and cooked up in Ibiza, in terms of, and I think Ibiza is still very, very important in terms of developing new paths, new ways. But literally within days you can go to the other side of the world and people will be on point. So I did a track years ago with Steve Mack and we called it Lingua Franca, which is actually international language, common language, and that's kind of what house music is. I think that's the biggest thing you can say about it from the early days of going to Chicago, going to New York, seeing it blow up in the underground in London and Manchester, and obviously in the late 80s here in Ibiza, and now it's worldwide. So I mean, obviously it's in its many forms.
Exactly, yeah. So in the last couple of years, we've started to see a lot of hip hop influences within the house scene, and it's kind of brought the house sound to a new generation. How do you feel about those hip hop influences and bringing those into the scene?
I don't know so much about hip hop. I think it's just dance music, house music, call it what you will, has gone through a kind of purple patch in terms of pub, acceptance again. I mean, what's going on worldwide now with dance music is very similar to what happened in the I suppose the mid-90s in the UK, where pop music appeared to be dominated by dance music, and now we're seeing that on a global scale. And to enable that to happen, it was because of people like David Guetta collaborating with the Black Eyed Peas, and then with a lot of, it's more the R&B stars really than the hip hop stars, and that brings in the kind of highest level of songwriters from LA and New York and Atlanta, and so all of the effort that would have gone into making award-winning, multi-million selling pop music, which is what basically hip-hop and R&B had become, has gone into now over a 4/4 beat with David Guetta producing it. So it's modern pop music really, and it's I've never been a one to kind of be down on progress and evolution. It's happening, and you just got to go with it. And there's always a that's the extreme kind of right wing, and then there's always an extreme left wing to it as well. There'll always be a reaction, but it's just progress, and it's the world almost catching up nearly 20 years later, basically, to what was happening in the UK in the early 90s. So
not so much revolution, but it's just, it goes around in cycles, doesn't it? I mean, we've had lots of different styles of house music go through the public eye, and at the minute we've just got that particular that's bringing it into a different new generation?
I mean, in the late 80s or the early 90s, you'd have a #1 record, you know, that would sell 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 copies or something. It'd be pretty much limited to the UK and maybe Northern Europe. Certain countries like Scandinavia and Holland would get it, Germany maybe, but not much else. And now it's America getting it. That's the biggest thing of all. It's the US getting it, and now South America on a big level as well. So, and that brings 55 more million people into the game. So
these days it seems like if you want to make it as a DJ, you've got to be producing as well. Do you think it's still possible for a DJ to become famous in the public eye just based on his skills on the decks alone without producing, or do you need to be producing these days?
Well, I think it helps. It certainly helps. I think I think making music is just expected. It's just a given now that if you're a new DJ, it's your CV, really. It's your way of getting the much quicker way of getting noticed. I mean, I'm still a purist in the sense that I believe the art of DJing is still about the order you play things in and reading the mood and all those skills. And some people that make music have those skills in abundance, and some others maybe less so. I still think there's room for in a way, the DJ that runs the hottest party, that's got the hottest crew around him in any one city, can still create a lot of heat. And then once in a while, you'll get virtuosity will come into play. That you'll get some person that comes along that's just so amazing in terms of their dexterity on the decks. Obviously, James Zabelio, I would say, even though he makes music, no one would ever really realize. Yeah. So, yeah, but I still believe running the hottest night, or having the best crowd, or starting a club in itself can still be a great way of making a name for yourself. I think in a way, although they all do make music, what you're seeing with Crosstown Rebels and Hot Natured and those kind of crews, and if you think back to a club like Back to Basics or something like that, all the DJs involved, they did make music, but I actually think you're probably more excited about what they were doing when they were running the party. So I think there's still another way, but it's just a given now that everybody kind of expresses themselves, has something to say. Yeah. At least doing remixes or edits,
Quick word about technology in the DJ world then. So as a DJ who started with vinyl and then moved on to CDJs and then Traktor, how have you dealt with the progression of technology? Is it something that you've embraced willingly, or is it something that you've kind of been dragged kicking and screaming into?
I mean, I was always a nerd about equipment. When I first started DJing, I ran a sound system as well, so I've always been fascinated by the technology side of the business. I was a vinyl junkie, and in some ways I still am. I still think the vinyl's the best representation. It sounds great, and it's the most collectible thing. I mean, I went through, first big chunk of my life buying records, and then I went through another big chunk of my life with CDs, and it's quite interesting that I've got all of the records and I've probably got very few of the CDs. I just didn't care about keeping them. They're all sitting in folders somewhere and they're disintegrating. And now basically it's like anything you want you can download again, except for those things, funnily enough. It's always the B-sides at 12 inches, the third track on the second side. And I think there was a time when I was going to get rid of it all and I couldn't, and I never got it together, and I'm glad now. And funny enough, someone said to me the other day, if I'd sold my record collection, I probably would have kept the albums, thinking, especially from my kind of jazz funk background and all the rare stuff from Japan and stuff like that, I probably would have kept the albums and sold the 12 inches. As it turns out, it's actually the 12 inches. The albums are all available again for download. It's the 12 inches that you can't get. So by a happy accident, I ended up keeping all the 12 inches. But no, I've always embraced technology. I was big on CDs, more because of the practicality of the traveling and the people starting to get international. Then CDs, the biggest problem I used to have with CDs is, you'd be playing something and another DJ would come in the booth and say, "Oh, you got to give me that." And so you say, "Yeah, I'll give you that," and then I always forget to burn it again. So you get to your next gig and you haven't got the best tune. So that was the most irritating thing for me about CDs. But then as soon as I saw Serato, I just thought, well, you're never going to have that problem again. And after working with Serato for a while, I found it a bit boring. I thought it didn't do anything at all other than not losing your CD case. It just seemed to be the same thing. And then I got into Ableton for a while, and I got really deep into Ableton. And I'm always been a spontaneous DJ. I've always been a DJ that seems to get so much new music. I always want to play it. And then obviously the legwork of preparation for Ableton became just more and more tiresome. And also I found it restricted spontaneity. And I started to kind of abuse it and like started having breakdowns because I was dragging in tracks left, right and centre as soon as I got them without preparing them, and the system was like crashing. And then you know, I moved on to Traktor, and I've never looked back. It's absolutely amazing. Every time I use it, I get more excited, and it's just reinvigorated. I suppose it keeps, you know, I've been doing it a long time, and I like a challenge. And
you've got to keep that energy up after.
I don't know if you'll ever master Traktor because it's so deep. It's like a kind of Yoda program.
There's things I keep finding in there that, you know, you never knew even existed in there, you know.
So some guy in room 516 of the Native Instruments building probably, you know, they got dark wizards.
They're actually chained up to the walls.
No, they've never seen the light of day. They've never seen television. I've talked to them. So Traktor's amazing, and it's the other thing about Traktor is obviously just going to see other DJs play. You always get, you know, you go and see Richie play. It's like go and see Dub. Although it's weird, some of them that as advanced as they are, they've all got their little traits. You know, like still using an older version of Traktor, or still using the Zone 92, or the, you know, still using external sound cards. I mean, everyone's got their own.
I saw Steve Lawler a couple of nights ago, and he was still using an old version of Traktor. You know, it was quite interesting.
But I think it's either they're so busy they never get time to change, maybe.
So can you just quickly tell us a little bit about your current setup and how you use it? Is there something that's unique to it?
2.5. It's I've settled into 2 X1s and an F1. I've been using the F1 since the start of the summer. Still getting my head around it, really. I think the thing about new things is I've learned is you can end up overusing them, and then watching the crowd fall asleep. So I think it's little by little, and I think just a little bit more every single set. It might be that tiny little inch forward, and suddenly you look back over a year and you've gone a long way. And I think that's probably the best way to deal with Traktor is with its new innovations.
Don't try and attempt everything all at once.
No, I surprise myself sometimes by just how long you can sit with 2 or 3 tracks rolling together. It's fantastic. So that's it. And I'm using a DB4. And I'm using it. We've had a lot of work this summer about whether to use the internal sound card or not, and what's better. I had a big discussion with Luciano and Reboot and all that crowd, and Richie about who's still stuck on the Zone 92. But I'm in the DB4 with the internal sound card. So,
but it sounds good.
It sounds amazing, and we got a new D&B system at Pasha, which is incredible actually. So we're still tweaking that, so getting the best out of it.
So last week we gave a couple of tips to aspiring Ibiza DJs for getting gigs here. Is there any advice that you'd like to give to DJs looking to get into the game, you know, just for getting in gigs in general, maybe not here, but elsewhere in the world as well?
Well, now you know, it's making music for sure, and then still doing, you know, mixtapes and stuff like that, and just obviously just then hanging out and getting to know the promoter and the DJs and stuff like that. I mean, it's just putting your face about really in Ibiza. 90% of the time it is about making tracks. And then it's weird that you might be amazing at making tracks and not very good at DJing. I mean, so many people now come on the radio. I interview them and their career's blowing up and they're traveling all over the world, and they've only just started DJing and they're still learning, and they're learning in front of like tens of thousands of people. But it's just the reality of the way things are now. It's just changed. So you know, some people will thrive in that environment and some people won't. So
Okay, Pete, thank you very much for coming on the show and for your time and your questions. We're going to do the mix now, so we'll see you live on air. Thanks very much.